congratulations on being inducted in the California Wrestling Hall of Fame.
Yes, and thank you for your support of me to be able to become a member.
Well deserved. Bob, what got you started in wrestling?
What got me started in wrestling was my football coach, Bob Bonheim. He also, I didn't realize at the time, was the head wrestling coach. And he said, Bob, I want you to come out and try wrestling. And I said, no, I'm not jumping off any top ropes. Like I watched Freddie Blassie and Gorgeous George on television with my little grandma, so I'm not doing that. He says, no, it's not like that at all. You have to come out and try for 2.5 weeks. If you don't get your letter in football. And I go, what? I can't get my letter in football unless I try? He says, that's right. So I go out for 2.5 weeks, and I come up to him. I said, okay, I've done my time. I'm going to get my letter right, and I'm out of here. And he goes, no, you have to do one more thing. And I go, oh, what? And he goes, you have to wrestle the varsity guy, Glenn Aycock, who was a really strong Christian, I remember, in school at that time, and who later became a pastor. And you have to wrestle this guy. And he was built like, I don't know, bodybuilder. And he says, I have to wrestle him? Didn't he place in CIF? He says, I don't care if you win or lose. I just want you to give everything you have, and that's all. Don't quit, don't give up. I said, okay. So I go out there, and we have this match, and I lose by 1 point. I'm going, he's varsity? I've only been out for 2 weeks. I can make varsity and get a varsity letter. And he goes, and so I stayed out for another week, challenged him, lost by 1 point. Stayed out for another week, and so it went 1 or 2 points all the way till about the last third of the season. And it says in the Bible, so a man thinks in his heart, he is. And I really believed that I could beat this guy. And so I started beating him by 1 point. And I made the varsity team, and I was hooked on wrestling. Then I meet the guy later on in a reunion, and I said, Glenn, what happened to you? Did you get senioritis or something? Why did I end up beating you at the end? He says, you didn't know that Coach Bonheim told me to keep it close by 1 point or less. So he needed somebody at 165. He didn't have anybody at my weight class for next year. And I go, oh no, he dangled that carrot out in front of me. And I would have never been in wrestling if he wasn't that smart of a coach.
That's amazing.
Dave Hengstiller and Jesus. Because Dave taught me what it was to push myself to the limit, to compete until I couldn't move anymore. And then my faith in Jesus Christ helped me to think of the words and bring out what was deep down inside me, like be strong, courageous, and do the work. And when I got so tired, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. I didn't have any heroes, and I just wanted to find out who the best guy was and try to defeat him. But that was it. I didn't know anything about national championships, or I really didn't know anything about CIF until I was in it. So it was a completely different era in California.
It was.
The single most outstanding event in a match or a performance. Some would think coaching Dan Henderson to 13 straight matches to make the 92 Olympics, or to repeat that and make the 96 Olympics, and coaching some of the mixed martial arts guys like Randy Couture, Heath Sims, an Olympian, and going down in Brazil and coaching the Gracies and wrestling techniques for 3 years. But it really is the David and Goliath story at El Camino College. We're in the last dual meet of the season. We had to win this match to be dual meet champions for the school. And Coach Hank Stiller weighed me in at 67, and he weighed 2 or 3 guys in each weight class, and then he was moving them around and adjusting them. He was pretty much a great coach and technician. And he decided, I thought I was going to go 77, then I thought I was going to go 91, then all of a sudden I'm at heavyweight. And he comes up to me and he says, you have to pin this guy for us to win the dual meet championship in the last meet of the season. I go, what? He says, yeah, you're at heavyweight. This guy's about 275 or bigger. He's solid muscle. And he says, this is what you're going to do. And Dave, he just said, yes, sir. and he said, you're not going to try to take him down. I want you to play away from him, waste time. We have our choice, second period. You're going to take on top. I did those exact same things. And then he said, you remember the new move we were learning last week in practice, the standing cradle? And I go, yeah. He says, you're going to do that. And I go, okay. So I did what he said. I was in the second period. The guy tried to stand up. I picked up his leg into a single leg position. And he was so big and strong, he thought he was just going to grab my head and pull me down and shove his leg down at the same time. I locked up my hands into a cradle, closed my eyes, and he was hopping around trying to push his leg back, and I kicked it out just at the same time. He went down like a sack of potatoes. I had my eyes closed and squeezing and hoping and praying the referee would slap the mat, and he did. And I won the match. We won the dual meet season, went undefeated. And then all the wrestlers on the team came out and picked me up on their shoulders and were celebrating and carrying me around the mat. And then the people from the stands came in and were doing it. And national championships, being an Olympic coach, nothing was as great as that moment in my life. It was like something that happened in Hollywood, and I'll never forget it.
Anything that you would do differently than?
I would wrestle more and more often, but also I think it would have been better if I was born much later, because they had, when we went to the tournaments, I went with Jack Fernandez and stuff, the South Bay Wrestling Club. We did really good, but we'd go to the Far Western tournament and I'd wrestle Marine captains, guys in the Army, Navy, guys out of college, guys in college. There was no age group. I even wrestled Russell Camilleri as a senior at the Far Western and was beating him by 1 point and got this phantom takedown because he was on the Olympic Club and they were sponsoring it, and lost the match and took second. But we were always competing against the AAU tournaments we had against men. Right. So I would like to have been able to have done that more. Yeah. What the most successful match or event I was in was, I was about age 30. I was with Athletes in Action, been runner-up 4 times in national championships and stuff. I was recuperating for 3 months from a shoulder separation, and I was out surfing, and that was part of my rehab. And it was about 6 to 8 foot waves at Seal Beach at 13th Street, and it's just like a pipeline there. And I was getting some great waves, and I was hearing all of a sudden a bunch of guys yelling and screaming. I thought, oh, they liked my wave. And I paddle out, I look out there, and I see these guys waving their hands saying, Bob, Bob, and waving me to come in. I go, okay, and I came in, and it was Gene Davis and the Athletes in Action team yelling at me, and Gene said, Bob, we want you to come to the national tournament in Colorado, the Federation National Tournament. We want to win the team championship. And John Peterson got injured and can't go. So we want you to go because we think you could take maybe third or fourth, and that would just give us enough team points to win. And I go, Gene, I've only been on the mat for a week and a half. And he goes, I don't want to hear it. He says, get your wetsuit off and have your wrestling equipment and be in the van in 20 minutes. We're leaving. And I go, yes, sir. 2 days later, after I weighed in, I'm wrestling in the national tournament. And basically, I pinned a couple of guys, decision another guy, and I was in like a semi-final match. And I was going up against the Olympic trials runner-up, and he was beating me by a point. I think he was beating 2-1. And in the last few seconds, I took him down and turned him for a point, and the time ran out, and I won by 1 point and made it into the finals. So I'm in the finals, and my shoulder's a little sore, but I know it's my responsibility to give everything I have at the task at hand, leaving none of myself behind, mentally, physically, or spiritually. And so I just had to give that to God. If my arm falls off, it's God's problem. So I'm wrestling, and we're having a really tough match. I thought I'd beat this guy. And he's got the 2-on-1 on the shoulder that I'm having the problem. And he's beating me like 3-1 going into, we had 9-minute matches, going into the final round. And I thought, well, I did pretty good. I'm in second place. That helps the team. And I did the best I can. And then I said, no, it's my responsibility, whether my arm gets torn off or whatever happens, to give everything I have to defeat my opponent out of an expression of my love towards God. So I went out there, wrestled around, tried something, missed it, wrestled around, he tried something, missed it. Like maybe 20 seconds left, I shot in to the legs. I don't even know what the move I did. And I turned him on his back as he was falling down, and the referee awards me the points, and I win 4-3 in the last few seconds. And that was a very memorable time, from surfing to the beach to winning the national championship, but even something more than just physical. A friend of mine from Athletes in Action was sitting next to a guy that saw the match, and he was in the tournament, was out, and he's going, what does that guy have that I don't have? What does that guy have that I don't have? And the guy said, well, let me tell you where he gets his inner strength from. And he talked to him about Jesus Christ, and he asked him to accept Christ into his life right there. And right in the stands, the guy prayed to receive Christ. So I have this great memory of not only physical, of winning a national championship, but being a catalyst for somebody else to come to know the Lord.
Okay, well, thank you, Bob. Congratulations on being inducted in the California Wrestling Hall of Fame.
Thank you. It's been a privilege, and I really wanted this because I've always considered myself a California kid. And I remember wrestling Jay Robinson in the national championship and 10-pointing him and then pinning him. And he got so mad at me. Afterwards, he said, Bob, you wrestle harder against me than you do anybody else. And I said, because I want you to know who's the best Californian.
Yeah. That's a good story.
Okay.